Welcome back, humor consumers, to the Life Happens, Laugh Anyway podcast. I'm comedian Tracy DeGraff.
And I'm Cathrine, co-host Bestie.
Hi, Cathrine.
Hi, Tracy.
How are you?
I'm great.
Why is that so funny?
I don't know.
I don't either. Well, this is episode 55 of the podcast.
That's crazy.
I know.
Kenny's going to be 55 tomorrow.
That's right. Mm-hmm. The double nickel.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Gosh.
I know. It goes fast, folks.
Real fast.
Kids.
Yeah.
If you're old enough to know that it goes fast, you've already experienced it. And if you're not old enough to know, buckle in.
You're going to.
It's coming.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, our topic today, Cathrine, is hope for the church.
Good.
I know. We need that.
We do need that.
Desperately.
I would say that desperately is just the right word.
Yeah. Right. So our topic is hope for the church, and we've got a couple takeaways, and we also have sponsors. Who are our sponsors, Cathrine? Let's talk about them for just a moment.
Just a moment only. Yeah. Muffin and Pooh, Kenny and Ron.
Our hubbies.
Right. Ron is Muffin. That he belongs to Tracy. Kenny is Pooh. And I'm sorry for these names, folks.
It's okay.
It just popped up, years ago when Kenny and I were dating, and it just stuck.
Yeah.
And you guys,
a
long time ago,
figured it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And both of us lived next door to each other, so we were next door neighbors first before we became besties.
Mm-hmm.
And then our husbands are kind of besties too.
Oh, what did Kenny call them? So you and I are Trey Cat. He said Puffin.
Puffin.
Because it's Pooh and Muffin.
Right.
I said, you might not want to say that in public. It sounds a little woohoo.
It does. It does, but it's a hilarious blessing because we get to be really close friends. And they get to be close friends too. Mm-hmm. And our kids, even our two sons, live together.
Yeah.
And, my one son who moved to Texas, he was very close with your kids, your son. And so we just kind of grew up together.
Yeah.
All of us.
And even my girls are friends with your boys.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
So it's one big happy family, little commune. Puffin. That's funny. Okay. So enough about them. Let's talk about the takeaways. Here are the three things that we hope you listeners will get out of our conversation today. Because you got to have a reason to tune in and stay tuned in.
Right, exactly.
Right? So we're
come back.
Yeah. All right. So the three things that we hope you take away from this episode. Number one, a new way to look at the challenges of the pandemic.
That's a good takeaway.
We need that.
Yeah.
We need to look at this from a new perspective. So we've got that. Second takeaway is that you will feel more excited about church and not so gloom and doom.
Yeah.
So that's good. And then finally, we're going to give you a relief valve. If you have been one that has been a little bit worried, about things during the pandemic and even worried about your church, like what's happening with the church, you don't have to worry. We're going to take the pressure off.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because it's Jesus' idea. It's his idea. He started it.
He's
going to finish it.
Right.
All right. So those are the takeaways. Well, let's just jump right in, Cathrine. What say you?
Well, as I told you before we started, I was researching all kinds of different sites, and pretty much most of them were focusing on what the problems are.
Right.
Well, that's pretty evident. We know what the problems are. Most of us do. It's glaring in our face. We've got society, culture, and the pandemic. Politics. All of that.
All the hot topics.
Exactly. So then I found one that was focusing on hope for the future and his predictions for the future. So I landed on that, and we both think that this is a pretty good one to focus on. So I'm basing what I'm, most things off of this.
Okay. And the title of the article?
It's, first of all, it's Carrie Nieuwhof.com. And the title of the article is 10 Predictions About the Future Church and Shifting Attendance Patterns.
Okay. And just to be clear, we looked into who this guy is. And from what we can tell, he's legit and he's, on board with evangelical Christianity and all of that. We don't know every single thing about him, but we're just going to look at this article. He's a blogger and a leadership. He's in the leadership space, so he sells courses on how to do improvement, like in yourself, improvement in the church, and how to be a better leader and things like that. So he's got a lot of different articles on his blog about controversial things as well as not controversial things. He's got a podcast. And this article, we just found it to be interesting. Another interesting thing about it is these things apply today in 2021.
Right.
But when was this
2022,
written?
actually.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting that it's January.
Yeah.
It's 2022.
Well, we just know that this was written before 2015.
Right.
We're not sure exactly when, but we looked back to all the comments, and it started in February 2015, as far as we could tell.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because there are concepts that they apply, during different seasons of time.
They really do. It's almost like I said, when I first read through this, I thought that it was current because I couldn't find a date on it. And I didn't feel like scrolling down to the bottom. Yeah. But here we are.
All right. So it's 10 predictions about the future church and shifting attendance patterns. So what's the first one?
Well, the first one is... the potential to gain is still greater than the potential to lose. So what does he say about that? He says, every time there's a change in history, there's potential to gain and potential to lose. That's always a given. And he says that the reason he believes that there's potential to gain is because we have to remind ourselves that the church was Jesus's idea, not ours, which we said in the beginning. He says it will survive our missteps and whatever culture trends happen around us. We certainly don't always get things right, but Christ has an incredible history of pulling together Christians in every generation to share his love for a broken world. That's the way it's been from the beginning.
Right.
And that's the way it's going to be. So it's easy to predict that, really.
Well, it is easy to predict it, but sometimes when you're in the middle of a mess, it's hard to imagine your way out of it.
That's true.
And you and I were talking about this the other day as we were thinking and brainstorming about this particular episode. And we started to think back about all the things that we know of, and we're no experts, but the things that everybody knows that the church has survived. The early church, just the fact that the early church even got off the ground.
Yeah. Well, for sure.
And then
with all the opposition.
All the things that you read about, just read the book of Acts and you'll be amazed that there was any church at all.
Yeah.
And that's because of God. It's God's church.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then we talked about the other plagues that have, plagued the earth. And the church still survived. And we talked about the Reformation and the Crusades and all the stuff. I mean, crazy.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on.
Okay. The second point is churches that, I love this one, by the way.
Oh, yep.
Yeah. Churches that love their model more than the mission will die. And he says, that said, many individual congregations and some entire denominations won't make it. The difference will be between those who cling to the mission and those who cling to the model.
Now, what do you mean by model?
Okay, well, he gives an example of a horse and buggy.
Okay.
And I love this example. And he says that horse and buggy manufacturers, they were relegated to boutique status is the way he said it. I like that. And so therefore they weren't being driven that way anymore. Cars took over. So he says the mission is travel. The model is a buggy or a car or a motorcycle or a jet. So that's what that means. It's the means. Do I want to say the means to the end?
Yeah. No. Well, it's how you get there.
It's how you get right. And and he points out how companies like Apple and Samsung, they have innovated ways to complete the mission of photography and music and things like that. Whereas like Kodak, they just stayed what they are, just film, in the
Right.
basic ways.
And they
haven't
went
moved on.
bye-bye.
Basically, yeah.
Well, and having had church experience myself, I was on church staff for 5 years, and then I've volunteered and worked in the church forever. I've definitely sat in on meetings about the mission and the model and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And I can see where if you're just constantly looking at, well, this is how we get from A to B to C to D. And, I've seen the graphs and the pictures. And so a new person comes into the church at entry A, they visit, they're a visitor. Then they become a seeker, then they become an attender, then they become a member. Then they get baptized. And there's an order to one's entry into the church community.
Okay.
And I can definitely see where we need to take a broader view and a step back and go, wait a minute, is that really effective? Is that really helping people to grow in their faith? No. Mm-hmm. So not to say that it's bad. It's not. Yeah. But it could be missing some stuff, like authenticity and real connection and meeting people where they are, stuff like that. I
think that's why, too, we have to really be listeners and mindful of when. So talking about the model, there's always a thing about our music, our worship music, and how that should be and what that should look like. But the mission, the ministry is what's most important. So what's the best way to go about that? Get people in. So
okay. So basically what he's saying is like, hold it loosely, let the Lord lead you. Don't just commit to the teeth to this particular way, because we have new things now. There's new information now.
Right.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Very good.
All right. The third one, the gathered church is here to stay. It's amazing, again, that this was written before the pandemic, because he does address this issue. He talks about how online, the online presence is a big deal. He says that while some will leave, it does not change the fact that the church has always gathered, because the church is inherently communal. Additionally, what we can do gathered together far surpasses what we can do alone. Yeah. Which is why there will always be an organized church of some form.
See how those commas trip people up? Oh. It's just like a stick out in front of your tongue. Just trip you up. It's a comma. Pause. So we're better together than alone. Yeah. Yeah. And there's obviously, everybody knows that.
It makes me think about the time, during the pandemic when we were shut down just for a little bit in the beginning. And we worshiped online a couple times. But then I think it was by the third time.
I was done.
You were done. And what did you do?
I went to the church.
In the parking lot.
I went by myself. Yeah. And I was in pain too, because as you know, I had a shoulder surgery that I needed, and they wouldn't allow it because of COVID.
It wasn't essential.
Right. Which I thought it was essential.
Right.
It was essential to me. And I was sad, and I was in pain, and I was in emotional pain, and I wanted my church peeps around me. Yeah. And so I went to the parking lot, and I sat there in the rain by myself, and I cried. I just cried.
And you watched church online. Because it was during church.
Yeah. I watched it on Facebook. Well, I had a hard time with online church. Like the first week that we were in our jammies, and it was March, wasn't it? Or cold out.
It was March, and I know during Easter, because I know we took communion at home. Right. And had our own little crackers. And,
so it was novel at first, and it was cozy. Like I was in my jammies, and I had my coffee and sitting on the couch. But after the first week of that, I was like, well, now I'm just going to go do dishes, And then the third week, I was just in the shower and listening, and I'm like, this is not good. I'm too ADD for this. So then I went to the church and cried. But now it's better. We're in person, of course, and we weren't shut down for very long. No. But this article, this number 3, the gathered church is here to stay. I agree with that. We need each other. And I had read some different statistics as well about post-COVID church and attendance. And attendance is down. Yeah. Anywhere from 20% to 60%. Yeah. That's a huge number.
It is a huge number.
So the question is, will they come back? And some people have left various churches because of the response to the pandemic, one way or the other. And you cannot please everybody.
Exactly.
Some people
right.
left because they didn't wear masks. Other people left because they did wear masks.
Exactly.
Some people left because there was no mention of this or there was mention of that or whatever your hot button topic is. Mm-hmm. So they've skirted around.
I think that's exactly what has happened during this pandemic is that we've really seen hot buttons in people we didn't know was there.
So true.
Like I was like, whoa, I didn't know that person.
Yeah, you were talking about me. Yeah. Like, I didn't know you felt that way, Tracy. Well, don't make me get butch.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely...
Well, when you're squeezed, that's when you see stuff comes out. And it's not to make a full character judgment like, oh, like that shouldn't surprise us that venom comes out of us.
Yeah, that's
we
true.
are sinful by nature.
True.
And we are sinners living a life in Christ. We're forgiven. But when we're squeezed, when we're in pain, when we're tired, when we feel offended, when we're not heard, whatever, fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's true.
I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying we, like, generically, like us.
As I kick her under the table, stifle it.
Jeez, we're so silly. All right.
Okay.
Let's move on.
All right. The fourth point, consumer Christianity will die and a more selfless discipleship will emerge. So he says that leads us to evaluate our church. Well, basically he says, consumer Christianity asks, what can I get from God? It asks, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
So that leads us to evaluate our church, our faith, our experience, and each other according to our preferences and whims. In many respects, even many critics of the church who have left have done so under the pull of consumer Christianity because nothing meets their needs. All of this is antithetical to the gospel, which calls us to die to ourselves, to lose ourselves for the sake of Christ. And as the church reformats and repents, a more authentic... Oh, there goes Tracy's phone.
We don't know how to shut that off. Sorry. One of these days we will figure it out.
I'll just keep reading.
Okay.
It's
done.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'll start over.
Okay. Go ahead.
As the church reformats and repents, a more authentic, more selfless church will emerge. Sure, we'll still have to make decisions about music, gathering times, and even some distinctions about what we believe, but the tone will be different. When you're no longer focused on yourself and your viewpoint, a new tone emerges, and that's so true.
Yeah. Well, I think the overall stamp of that can just be humility.
Yeah.
Considering other needs better, above your own, and their needs, considering others better than yourselves. That's what Christ came and said. He took the form of a servant. He took on the nature of a servant.
He did.
He was God.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't consider equality with God to be a thing to even be grasped. It wasn't even in his thinking.
Right.
That's from Philippians.
So... Wow.
Yeah, it's so crazy, right? Because
it
he
is
died
crazy.
for us.
I mean, the King of Kings.
Yep.
And the Lord of Lords, and he was cleaning their feet, washing their feet, and
so if we take a stance of humility rather than claiming dominance over like other people's ideas or whatever, if we just take a stance of humility and look to how we can love one another better and more selflessly, love them for their good, considering their feelings and their needs.
Yeah.
Happy world.
Like Jesus is sitting right next to you.
Yeah.
Physically.
Gosh, I'm getting really convicted now. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What else?
All right. 5.
Number 5.
Sundays will become more about what we give than what we get.
Well, that's an obvious outpouring of number 4.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Our gatherings will become less about us and more about Jesus and the world he loves. Rather than a gathering of the already, there goes my computer, convinced, the churches that remain will be decidedly outsider-focused, and word will be supplemented with deeds. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm just seeing if I should keep going on that one. Basically, it's just supporting what we just read.
Well, it's interesting, the next sentence that it says in that paragraph. It says, in the future church, being right will be less important than doing right. So it'll be less about spouting off your opinions of things and more about just loving each other and treating each other with love and meeting, I think, felt needs. Felt needs that people have like right now. Like we've seen in our community, which I love our church. Our church is small. We live in a small community and we have a small church. And I love it because we just had a recent outbreak of COVID in our church, and people came around and helped one another.
Yeah, they should.
As much as we could possibly do.
Yeah, and that's tricky because of, you can't enter the home, but
right.
you can work around that. But it is tricky.
It is. And I myself, everybody goes through stuff, and I've been grateful to have my church peeps.
Oh, me too.
My Bible study and my small group. Oh, come on now. When you need prayer or you just need encouragement, that you've got a source for that.
Yeah.
Amen.
Definitely. A church family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Number 6.
Number 6. Attendance will no longer drive engagement. Engagement will drive attendance. Currently, many churches try to get people to attend, hoping it drives engagement. But in the future, that will flip. The engaged will attend in large measure because only the engaged will remain.
Interesting.
Boom.
Yeah. Mic drop.
Yeah.
Okay, so in attendance for the church is obvious. It's attendance. And by the term engagement, what they're referring to is people sticking around, like them getting involved in the ministries of the church, getting to know people in the church, joining a Bible study, joining a small group, getting involved in the worship team, stuff like that.
Wanting to really be there and,
right.
and grow.
Right.
I think there's that component of wanting to grow.
Growing their faith individually, but also participate, contribute, as well as receive from the community. So becoming a real part of a community, so it would be the opposite. Engagement would be the opposite of a pew sitter. The term pew sitter or bench warmer, that's just a warm body that comes in to check a box to say, I came here, I did that, I did my good deed for the week, and you leave and you're not involved. Yeah. You don't give financially, you don't support with your prayers, you don't, support with your money, support with your prayers, support with your time. Yeah. And it is a community. It's a give and take,
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So in the past, some former models that I've seen, even in my experience working in the church, I've seen attendance come first. Like people attend the church, they visit the church. That's step 1. Then step 2 is engagement. Let's get them involved. Let's get them into a small group. Let's, do a social thing, whatever. Where this guy is saying that's going to flip in the future. And perhaps he's right. Perhaps now is the time.
Yeah. I think to at least be open to it, look for that as you might be church shopping.
Yeah. Or even if you're involved, like we're involved in our little church. And if you're involved in your church, it can be really exciting. I think we should be very excited about this prediction or
I like
thought.
I like what it says here. If you really think about this, engagement driving attendance is exactly what has fueled the church at its best moments throughout history. It's an exciting shift.
It is. It is, because I hate to say this term, but if you're not really engaged in the church, you're kind of like dead weight. You're just sitting there. You're not doing anything. You're not giving of yourself nor receiving love from others. You're just there.
Yeah.
And it's hard for churches to function if they don't have people that are really engaged in the ministry.
Well, I think that the secret is really, not that it's that much of a secret really, but the best way to receive is to give.
Right.
I think that's, most people know that, but then they don't really think about that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an interesting thing to think about. And I think for us, the challenge is how can we become more engaged in our own church community? How can we give more of ourselves and be more vulnerable and more open to...
There's that word, vulnerable.
I know.
Don't be afraid, folks.
It's all
It's
good.
okay. Because if everybody's vulnerable, then we're all in the...
Well, but that's what it takes.
Yeah, it
to
does.
build a relationship, it takes vulnerability.
It does.
Because I'm here to not only get to know you, but to be known. And I want to be known and still be loved. And that's how I feel about being authentic and real with somebody. I don't have it all together. You just spend 10 minutes with me and you figure that out. I wrote a whole book about not having it all together.
It's true.
Yeah.
All right. Number 7, simplified ministries will complement people's lives, not compete with people's lives. For years, the assumption has been that the more a church grew, the more activity it would offer. And I think this is important to listen to this. The challenge, of course, is that church can easily end up burning people out. In some cases, people end up with no life except church life. I know people fall into this.
Yeah.
Some churches offer so many programs for families that families don't even have a chance to be families. And the church at its best has always equipped people to live out their faith in the world. But you have to be in the world to influence the world.
Yeah, and that's a trap always for families. When you're in the middle of family life, now as you know, Ron and I became empty nesters, and we can't stop smiling, right? We're just like, this is great.
You can't stop announcing it either.
I know. It might
all
just
right.
be the rest of my life like that. But when we were in it to win it during the 90s and the 2000s, and we were raising our family, it's easy to fall into those traps of letting other things just sort of consume your time, whether it's church or work or sports, youth travel stuff. There's so many options out there. There's way more options than we have time to commit to.
Yeah.
So it's very important that we take a look at what we're doing and how we're doing it and carve it out in a balanced way and then adjust.
You know, I have to say this. When you said sports, it made me think of this. When I was really young, and I only had 1 or 2 kids at the time, Patrick and Emily maybe, and they were small toddlers. And I wasn't quite, I wasn't quite a full-blown Christian, just kind of curious at the time. And I worked with a woman who, they were very involved in sports. But her children were older by then. And she had said to me, I wish I had spent more time at church, doing church things with the kids as opposed to the other way around with the sports. And that really stuck with me.
Yeah. It's hard to know because we can't go back and know what it would be like if we went the other way. But perhaps if she had done that, it might have worked out, or it might have turned the child off.
Oh, true.
Totally
I'm not saying that, bring your kids to church and all is going to be merry and well. That's not at all what I mean. And I knew she didn't mean that.
Yeah.
I just meant that that she needed Jesus in her life. I knew what she meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the encouragement for us as well as our listeners would be to just go to the Lord and ask him, how much time do you want to devote to church life, and then do it.
Yeah. I just want to add what it says here on this paragraph too, because I really like what it ends with. It says churches that focus their energies on the few things that the church can uniquely do best will emerge as the most effective churches moving forward. Simplified churches will complement people's witness, not compete with people's witness.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
All right. Number 8.
Online church will supplement the journey, but not become the journey.
Interesting. Yeah. After seeing so many people go to online church, during the pandemic.
Exactly.
Yeah. Especially considering this was written way before the pandemic.
Know. Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
And he even says here, there's a big discussion right now around online church, which I didn't know that back in 2015. Did you?
No.
And let's see what he says here. I think in certain niches, online church might become the church for some who simply have no other access to church. Pandemic. But there is something about human relationship that requires presence. Because the church at its fullest will always gather, online church will supplement the journey. He says he believes that online relationships are real relationships, but they're not the greatest relationships people can have.
Well, it's the example of what we just talked about with engagement and attendance.
Mm-hmm.
If you're engaged in a church, meaning you're in it, your friends are there, you've gotten to know people, you look forward to going.
Mm-hmm.
You look forward to on Sunday morning getting up, getting dressed, going to church, saying hello, how are you?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody says I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, they usually do.
Yeah,
Well,
but that's okay. I mean,
yeah.
that's human nature.
Yeah.
And sometimes, people are going through certain things and you talk to them and whatever, and you have coffee,
Yeah.
all the stuff.
But, you talked earlier about being vulnerable, but some will just give a quick synopsis of,
whatever
this
thing is.
Garbage is going on, but
Right.
such and such, we'll get over it. It's usually.
And there is something about corporate worship that really makes a difference.
It's true.
I'm not like a singer or anything like that, but I like to worship.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do
with my
too.
friends.
And number 9, online church will become more of a front door than a back door. So what does he mean by that? He says there's no question that today online church has become a back door for Christians who are done with attending church.
Yeah.
While online church is an amazing supplement for people who can't get to a service, here's what I thought was kind of sort of funny, but it's not. It's really not. It's still an off-ramp for a Christian whose commitment to faith is perhaps less than it might have been at an earlier point, meaning like they're just kind of going.
Yeah, they're just dipping their toe in.
Yeah. I don't know why I said that was funny. I'm so sorry, Lord.
It's okay.
But
it's a journey.
Yeah.
It's a real journey, this whole Christian life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. He says within a few years, the dust will settle and a new role for online church and online ministry will emerge. And he's not talking about the pandemic, but he says online church has the potential to become a massive front door for the curious, the unconvinced, and for those who want to know what Christianity is all about.
True.
I think that's really good.
Very true.
Mm-hmm.
Comfort matters when it comes to building relationships as well. So if somebody is wanting to check out a church, they're probably going to check out their online service.
Yeah, I just thought of something. I thought maybe I'd bite my tongue on that one. Because, you can look online and be like, they're into that? Yeah, no, I'm not going to go there.
Oh, boy. Remember when we were looking for churches to visit and there was like snake charmers?
Okay, I was going to say that. But then I thought we might have listeners that
do the snake charming thing?
Maybe.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Maybe.
Sorry. Let's move on. Number 10.
Okay. Gatherings will be smaller and larger at the same time. Well, how can that be?
I'm sorry. I'm still on the snake thing. Okay.
All right.
Yeah. How can it be smaller and larger at the same time? That makes no sense, Catherine. Figure it out.
Well, I don't have to. This guy did.
Okay, good.
While many might think the megachurch is dead, it's not. And while others think megachurches are awful, there's nothing inherently bad about them. Size is somewhat irrelevant to a church's effectiveness. There are bad megachurches and bad small churches, and there are wonderfully effective megachurches and wonderfully effective small churches. We will likely see large churches get larger. Multi-site will continue to explode as churches that are effective expand their mission.
Mm-hmm.
So multi-site, I'm thinking they mean like all the campuses, right?
Yeah, like they have a pastor who leads and they go on the screen and do the stuff, and they might have a satellite pastor
that's what I was thinking,
handles people,
satellite.
but they have well, I think that's a good use of technology, though. We have to move forward with the technology that's in front of us, don't we?
Well, that's what he's saying.
Can't ignore it.
That's what he's saying. Basically.
Well, that's okay. So that's on the larger side, but read this next part.
At the same time, churches will also establish smaller, more intimate gatherings as millennials and others seek tighter connections and groups. I don't know why he says millennials, but it looks like you can click on it and look into that further.
Mm-hmm.
Paradoxically, future large churches will likely become large not because they necessarily gather thousands in one space, but because they gather thousands through dozens of smaller gatherings under some form of shared leadership. That kind of reminds me of small groups in a way. And
right.
So we could talk about small groups in a minute. Some of those gatherings might be as simple as at a coffee shop or even home venues under a simple structure.
Yeah.
And he says we will see the emergence of bigger churches and smaller churches at the same time as the gathered church continues to change.
You know, if you think about what we've all been through with COVID, it's definitely given us sort of a look at our vulnerability. We're vulnerable.
Very.
And
Yeah.
it's not a bad thing to recognize your own vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people can get super fearful, which is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But if we look at it from a balanced view of, yes, we're all going to die. Every single one of us, we're going to die. That's a hard statement to really embrace, but it is a true statement.
Yeah.
And then live our best life every single day and love the person that's right in front of you. Like, let's love each other. Let's do our best in that regard, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so these small gatherings, like I saw something on the Peatone community page. There's somebody that's looking for making some friends. And she just said, anybody want to go have lunch at the local cafe, you know, and just hang out.
Aw.
And I think that kind of small gathering in the church for people just to say, hey, let's just get together for coffee.
Yeah.
No program, no agenda.
Yeah.
Just coffee.
Yeah.
That would be nice. Yeah. All right. Anything else?
No.
Well, that was great fun.
Well, I feel like it was filled with optimism.
Yeah.
And I feel that it's realistic.
It is. And there's hope that, you know, the COVID has been a really tough thing for all of us, a tough season. There is hope that positive changes can be and are being made as a result. And one day we'll look back and go, wow, you know, stronger.
Yeah.
Lord willing.
Yeah.
All right. Let's look at our scripture verse for today.
Oh, yes.
I forgot to put it up here, so
It's
forgive
Romans.
me.
That's okay.
It's 8:24.
Yeah, I have it.
Oh, okay. You can read it.
For in this hope we were saved. But hope that is seen is no hope at all. Who hopes for what they already have?
True that. So basically what the verse is saying is that, yeah, you're not going to have hope if you're just looking at what you have.
Right.
You've got to have the faith to believe that the hope is coming, you know, healing, more peace, more contentment, more grace, love, all the good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. What's our call to action today?
I forgot. What is it?
Oh, boy. It was your idea. Stop.
Oh, complaining.
Yes.
Stop complaining.
Yes.
That's right.
Stop complaining.
And be a part of the solution.
Yeah.
And what is the solution?
Look to Jesus.
Right.
That's what we talked about.
Upward.
Yeah, look upward, not
I
inward.
know.
You remember now? I know it was like a half hour ago. All right. Well, next week we're going to be talking about home decor trends.
Oh, good.
In 2022. We're getting off of some of these heavy topics.
Yeah. So when we prayed before this, and I was saying, Lord, I don't want to misrepresent anything. And this is your church, and I don't feel equipped to talk about it.
Yeah.
So the home decor, I can talk about that.
Well, and he knows our heart.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing about Christianity. It's all grace. The whole premise of Christianity is grace.
Thank God.
For
Thank you, God.
it is by
Oh, my
grace that you have been saved. It is the gift of God, not by works.
Oh, Lord, would you remind everybody?
Yeah, we need that reminder.
Oh, look at my shirt. It says grace upon
Grace upon grace. Yeah. So Ephesians 2:8 and 9, people. That's the verse for that. All right, so that's our next episode, and you have been listening to the Life Happens, Laugh Anyway podcast. I'm still comedian Tracy DeGraff.
I'm still Catherine.
We'll see you next time.
Goodbye.